Story 1. I've been told it's hard to know what prepositions to use. It is on a bus, but in a car. In an hour, under an hour, over an hour, around an hour, after an hour, for an hour, on the hour, within the hour, at 12 o'clock, between the hours of 1 and 2, and per hour all mean different things. Story 2. My friend is German. I complained about how hard it is to learn the language. She sent me this. Story 3. Nothing specific, but the fact that you can never know how to pronounce a word based on its spelling is endlessly annoying. However, it does make English quite enjoyable in music. The idea that pronunciation is merely a suggestion makes it very flexible. It's like playing with putty instead of building blocks. Story 4. Island was a difficult concept for me to understand. Perhaps it is a loan word or originated from Old English, but it does not follow the modern pronunciation rules that I have learned, and it troubled me. Story 5. Not the language specifically, but for a while I thought inch was the English word for centimeter. I would get very confused when I followed tutorials that said to cut 4 inches. I didn't understand why my cut was so much shorter. Later, I thought I had figured it out. 10 inches makes a foot. Then I saw someone refer to themselves as 5 feet 11, and I got confused all over again. It was only last year when I learned that 12 p.m. is noon and 12 a.m. is at night. Why does it not switch at 1? Story 6. It's not that some words are particularly hard. It's more about concepts that don't exist in your native language. For example, I had a lot of trouble with he and she, simply because in my native language there are no gendered pronouns. You don't need to think about a person's gender at all, so it's really hard to suddenly start keeping a list of who is what gender in order to use the correct pronouns. Story 7. In Northern Ireland, our accents make many words sound similar. For example, pants, pens, and pence all have a similar sound, as do mirror, mare, and mayor. This often confuses people. Story 8. I am French-Canadian. The giveaway to my Frenchness is the English word thunder. No matter how I try, it still sounds like I say thunder. Story 9. When do you use the? I am now a fluent English speaker, but I still cannot explain this to my parents. Story 10. To this day, I still can't understand to come undone. I have been learning English for over 3 decades now. Story 11. For the longest time, I thought that get your act together was get your ass together. I only learned the difference about 2 weeks ago. I have been speaking English for nearly 10 years now. Story 12. Pencil sharpener. In our French school, we would say aiguisoir instead of taille crayon. My brain would search for a single word in English, blank out, and then I would yell out the French word in an English accent. Mom, where's the aiguisoir? Story 13. I once shared accommodation with a couple from the United Kingdom, and the woman kept asking me, "What's for tea?" At first, I thought she said, "What's 40?" which totally confused me. I asked her to repeat it, and she said it slower. "What is for tea?" I replied, "I'm not drinking tea. I'm having dinner." She responded, "Yes, I know you're not, but what's for tea?" I said I didn't know what was for tea. She then explained that what's for tea means, what are you eating for dinner? We both had a good laugh, and I learned some English slang while being able to tell my non-native English friends how strange the British are. Story 14. I spent my childhood in the United States before moving back to my home country, so I didn't really learn English. It was just the first language I remember growing up with. One thing I noticed my school friends struggled with was phrasal verbs, such as go in, take out, and grow up. In our language and many others, there is only one word for each verb. Think of enter instead of go in, extract instead of take out, or return instead of go back. For a total beginner, when you're trying to decode word by word, phrasal verbs, which consist of 2 words forming a single concept, can be really confusing. Story 15. After considering myself fully bilingual for 30 years, I was recently informed that the S sound in father is not the same as in apple. It also took me years to realize it's subtract and not subtract. The bathroom is the one you have in your house. Restaurants and schools have restrooms. I knew about the word restroom, but I assumed it was a synonym. Story 16. English wasn't the problem. Chinese was. 1/2 hour is 30 minutes. Combined into 1.5 hours means an hour and 30 minutes. I hated that question in math. Story 17. This situation is amusing. I was playing Dungeons and Dragons with my ex and his army friends. It was the first and last time I played. My first language is Spanish, and there was another wife who spoke German. My character was going down a corridor when I was told I saw an elbow turning to the right. Using my imagination, I assumed it referred to an enemy's elbow, so I chose not to continue down the corridor. Later, they were all upset with me because we got ambushed, and if I had proceeded down the corridor, the exit would have been to the right. The term elbow referred to a bend in the corridor, not a body part. I am unsure if this was a language barrier issue or a misunderstanding of military terminology. The German wife was very supportive of my decision because she interpreted it the same way I did. Story 18. Minefield letters that make a word hard to pronounce until you realize they are not pronounced at all. Sword? It is actually just sword. Night? Night. Wednesday. Wednesday. Story 19. For me, it's the word draw. I initially learned it with the meaning of drawing something with a pencil. However, it has many more uses, so I am no longer surprised when I come across a new meaning. Story 20. This is more of a concept than a word, but the term upset is still difficult to understand. My first language doesn't have a direct translation for it, and depending on the context, it may convey several meanings in English. Story 21. German here. My British coworkers would use the phrase, taking the piss. I have to admit I'm still not sure what that means. Story 22. I'm multilingual, but my native language is English. I will say that quinoa gave me trouble the first time I encountered it. I pronounced it quinoa. Story 23. I don't really have issues with English because I learned it in kindergarten, but for the rest of my family, here are some things I've noticed. The word only versus just. In our language, to say something like, don't worry about it, he's just like that, we use the same word for only. So my parents would say, don't mind it, he's like that only. Some people overcorrect and use just for everything. Like they'll say, he'll just eat pasta without tomato sauce, to mean he'll only eat pasta without tomato sauce. Possessives. In our language, we don't have separate words for his and her. So sometimes my relatives confuse them or match the gender to the wrong thing. It gets interesting when they say things like, his husband. I've noticed that Spanish speakers do the same thing. When I learned Spanish in school, I realized it's because Spanish works the same way as my language in this regard. I have a feeling many languages are similar, making this one of the hardest aspects of learning English. Story 24. W and R sounds close together. My friends and I created a challenging sentence to pronounce, Aurora is worried about World War I. Additionally, there is a difference between this and that as well as these and those. Story 25. I'm having trouble saying suit yourself without the first word sounding like shoot. I mostly avoid the phrase. Story 26. There is a difference between cousin and nephew or niece. I thought they meant the same thing and used them interchangeably. Story 27. Words that have double meanings in one language but not in the other, such as learn versus teach and borrow versus lend, can be challenging to differentiate. Story 28. My child is bilingual in Japanese and English, and I've noticed that she struggles with how to answer negative questions in English. For example, you're not hungry? You didn't meet your friend? In Japanese, you answer yes to questions like these, agreeing with the questioner. For example, you didn't meet your friend? Yes, I didn't meet my friend. However, in English, the answer remains no for both positive and negative questions. Did you meet your friend? No, I didn't meet my friend. You didn't meet your friend? No, I didn't meet my friend. Story 29. Answering what's up with what's up seems normal now, but I remember some awkward interactions where I went into great detail about what I was doing because they asked. Story 30. Off topic, but I lived in China for 2 years, and I'm still not sure I pronounced "sia" correctly when saying thank you. They told me I sounded like a little kid when I spoke with that tone. It was true. Story 31. Not a word or phrase, but learning about all the different types of tenses overwhelmed me at first. Story 32. English is pretty easy. Now try learning some words in German or Russian. Even the long version of hello in Russia was very hard for me. Story 33. Do you mind doing this? No, I do not mind doing it. So yes, I am willing to do it. It's literally a yes or no question asking if I mind doing something or if I have a problem doing it. Story 34. Why, when an alarm goes on, does English say it goes off? It's clearly not off anymore. It's on. What do you mean it went off? Story 35. Plural form. Person-people, not persons. Ox-oxen, not oxes. Brother-brethren, not brothers. Dice, not dies. Penny-pence, although pennies are acceptable. Index-indices, not indexes. Sheep-sheep, not shoops or sheeps. Louse-lice, but houses, houses. Story 36. Pronunciation can be quite challenging. Rough, cough, dough, plow, hiccup, slew, though, through, and thorough. It's quite perplexing. Story 37. I still struggle with the term onto. Sometimes I use it in a sentence, but if someone points it out, I stop using it for weeks just to be safe. If no one corrects me, I continue using it. Story 38. Turn up means to arrive. Turn down means to refuse. Turn in means to go to bed. Turn out refers to how many people have come. Story 39. Dividing a word into syllables is quite complicated. My first language is Spanish, and finding syllables in almost every word is very simple. Story 40. I never knew I would read such a question on a forum like Reddit, because I learned a phrase from Victorian-era novels that almost broke my brain. No sooner than A happened, B occurred. I struggled to understand the temporal order of these events. On the surface, it made sense. B happened almost immediately after A, but when I started dissecting the words, I became a bit confused. Story 41. 10 years of experience. This only comes up when writing a curriculum vitae, but it was very confusing to me. According to what I read, the experience belongs to the years, which is why it has an apostrophe. This seems unusual. You might think the experience belongs to you, but that's not the case. I believe even native speakers face difficulties with this sometimes, so I don't feel too bad about it. Story 42. I learned Spanish in Mexico, and there they have a particular way of using the word hasta, until that contradicts all of my instincts from English. For example, they'll say, voy a salir hasta las 9 p.m., which is literally, I'm going to go out until 9 p.m. I assumed that meant they would be out of the house until 9 p.m., at which point they would go home. What they mean is that they're going to leave the house at 9 p.m., which, to my understanding, should be expressed as no voy a salir hasta las 9 p.m., literally the opposite of what they say. To make matters more confusing, other parts of the Spanish-speaking world use the same rules as the English-speaking world. Voy a salir hasta las 9 p.m. would mean, I'm going out until 9 p.m. and then I'm going home. And in order to say that you'll be at home until 9 and then you're going out, you would have to say no voy a salir hasta las 9 p.m. I understand it now, but it still feels weird and wrong. Story 43. I find it interesting that you seem to have assumed that if someone is bilingual, English is their second language. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.